Welcome to the 14th episode of Profs Radio, the show to ace out your business by learning from entrepreneurs on experience how to solve problems. I'm your host, Peter Martin, Director of Profs.biz. Today we have presentation and communications trainer, Duncan Yellowless. Good morning, Duncan. Do you want to say hi to listeners and tell them about what you do?
Morning, Peter. Hi, folks. Yeah, so I'm a presentation and communications trainer and coach. I help people make the most of standing up and talking. It's a really powerful thing to stand up in front of other people and talk about your messages and talk about your ideas, but it's one that is often done very badly and one that gets a bit neglected. I think we spend lots of money on our marketing and our social media and all of that sort of stuff, but if you can stand up for an hour in front of the right 100 people and really nail it, that's way more powerful than a lot of social media or kind of ad campaigns and that kind of thing. So yeah, I help people make the most of those opportunities, really.
That sounds good. So can you tell me a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today, helping people with presentations and communication?
Yeah, sure. It's a bit of a roundabout one, really. I started. Well, actually, I've always done theatre since I was little, since I was a kid. I've been doing drama since I was about 12. On stages of various sizes and in productions of various qualities. I did a lot of youth theatre that was bad. But then I went to Edinburgh University and studied mechanical engineering. So I got that degree. But all the way along, I was doing theatre and I stopped performing and started directing. So you start to see this kind of not being on stage, but helping the people on stage give the best performances and trying to get, make a scene work properly and get the right emotional response that we're kind of after. And I finished that and then decided that I didn't want to be an engineer. I'm not good enough at maths. Good enough to get the degree, but not to really do the job, I think. So I went off and did a master's in the history of science and science communication. So kind of, I had this idea that I wanted to be the Brian Cox for the history of engineering, right? I wanted to stand on telly and tell people about the stories of engineering because I think they're really cool and interesting and fascinating. And so I spent some time learning about the history of science and about science communication and how that works and how it's kind of happened. It's a whole industry unto its own, which I didn't really know about. But of course, then decided that being Brian Cox wasn't quite what I wanted to do either. And so ended up going, well, what do I do next? I've got a master's, I've got this engineering degree. I really like theatre and performance. Where's my box? Where do I fit? Happily, at about that time, a job came up at the International Centre for Life, which is a science centre, a bit like the Science Museum. It's in Newcastle upon Tyne. And I got a job there creating science shows. So science demonstration shows for families, explaining concepts like flight or food or angular momentum to 10-year-olds and blowing stuff up. And yeah, so I really liked that. And I was training the performers to deliver those shows. I was writing the shows, training them, writing workshops. And they started to farm me out, I guess, to train academics in communicating science to the public and public engagement and that kind of thing. So I started running sessions for academics, and all the way along, I'm kind of obsessed with communication and what happens between a performer and the audience. That was my master's dissertation, was about using theatre as a communication medium for science and that kind of how do you do it? How do you make it work? Is it effective? And started applying a bunch of that to the stuff I was doing. And I did all sorts of really fun things with life. I did around Bright Club, which is a comedy night where academics do stand-up comedy about their research. It's amazing. You should come along. It's still run by the Centre for Life, by a good friend of mine, Marilena. And it's really funny. It happens at the Stand Comedy Club in Newcastle. There's a professional compere paying audience. The stakes are quite high here. This isn't a dry academic lecture. It was really good fun. I absolutely loved it. So when I took when I sort of had enough of that, I took a year or so out to do work on something else, completely different project, back to my engineering roots, a kind of design innovation project. But that helped me set up on my own, have a bit of free time to start working on my own and kind of go freelance. And I've been doing this for just over 18 months now, full time, with a whole bunch of different clients and different sorts of people. Still with one foot in academia, but increasingly a foot in the commercial world as well, because, you know, the problems are the same. We've got loads of interesting, exciting ideas, and people struggle to communicate them well, or struggle to make the audience really, the experience really work for the audience as well. And yeah, I really like helping people, and I'm learning more and more about it all the time.
So you feel like you've found your box now?
Yeah, I think so. At least for now, the box for
At
now.
least for now.
I'm one of those personalities. I think that, you know, in 10 years I'll go off and do something different. But it's for now this is it. I've learned so much since I went kind of full time on this and focused on this. I've done a lot of reading of research papers and various different bits and pieces, and there's still more to learn, and my own ideas are developing. And yeah, helping folk, because that's fundamentally what it is. People struggle. I know yourself have mentioned that you get quite nervous about public speaking and that sort of stuff. And that's, you know, there's on the one side, I help businesses by making the most of this opportunity. And, you know, pay £1,000 to go to a conference. You know, you want to get some return on that, but also helping individuals face those fears, deal with those nerves, and kind of build their confidence with it, because it's a key skill. It's a real key skill for business.
It really is, actually, because everything comes down to people as well. So we were just talking on another podcast about how one thing that you sell is your product or service, but the other thing that you're really selling, that it all comes down to, is the people. And sometimes you find a product that you like, but you don't quite gel with the person, which means you think, oh, I'll go elsewhere for that solution, because there's always the same product. There's not always the same person. And if you're not communicating well, also it's particularly hard in my industry. You go to a networking event, there's about 5 people that'll do websites. Like,
yeah, exactly. The
any given time, or social media, and you're just like, yeah. So if you're not communicating effectively, I'm better than the other 4. Like,
and that's where to some extent, you know, the authenticity and personality comes in, but also gets kind of smushed into personal branding and that sort of idea. You know, I'm there's maybe 4 or 5 sort of solo presentation trainers kind of in my area, and I know them all quite well now, and we kind of get together and chat every now and then. And what separates us out is the content's a little bit different, but actually it's personalities. And, you know, some people like working with me, some people like working with them, and that's fine. You know, it's about that. So if you're in a room with 5 other people who build websites, you know, everybody's going to be using up to the minute software. Everybody's going to be doing snazzy stuff. The thing that people connect to, and this is always the case, is people. You know, that kind of old phrase, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. The most important bit of that for me is the second people. People buy from people. Okay, so if you go out there as an organization trying to sell as an organization, particularly in the age of social media and on social media, it's not going to work. You know, people buy from people. They want to connect with a human being, or at least something that feels very like a human being, which is where chatbots and that sort of stuff are starting to head. And if you get that right, then that's where the sale happens. People decide they like you, decide they want to work with you. What your product or service is definitely secondary.
Yeah, always the case.
Yeah.
That's why it's quite important that you can obviously communicate well with these people, because if not,
and this is one of the things why my kind of training and the way I work can be focused on presentations, so standing up in front of 100 people or 1,000 people, whatever, but it also applies to one-to-one conversations, to those sales pitches, to those small business meetings, to you know, round table board meeting type presentations. It's all communication, and the things that make a presentation to 1,000 people good are the same things that make, you know, this chat with you good, or a conversation with a client good.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring on the era of AIs.
No, absolutely not. No. These skills will get more and more important, I think, as we get more and more tech savvy, more and more jobs done by robots. It'll be more important that you can communicate with people.
It's very true. I do like how they are trying to educate children in terms of manners and stuff, rather than just snapping commands where they try and make them say please or make them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been a big thing. I think so one of the things, because I did theatre a lot as a kid, And one of the things that doing theatre, and it wasn't serious theatre, we did Shakespeare every now and then, but it was mostly messing around, playing theatre games, the improv games. Think Whose Line Is It Anyway? That kind of stuff, but in sort of silly free form. And what it does, I think, is it teaches you empathy. It teaches you to listen to other people because you have to respond to them. It teaches you to say yes to the ideas that people are suggesting and be open to the ideas that people are suggesting, and to be confident in your own stuff as well. So when you're putting stuff forward, to go forward with confidence, but to always be aware of folk around you and to listen. I think teaching children drama or theatre skills in school as complete mandatory, I'd be behind that. I think that would be a good thing.
It is. I remember enduring drama through.
It is, yes, it is perhaps not for everybody, or maybe that medium, but I think finding some way to get kind of some empathy training or because fundamentally communication kind of is about that connection. And not everybody is the natural show off that I am, which is a good point. But I think that it's a skill that's going to become more important as tech takes over. Yeah.
So you've obviously gone from your employed work, you've done your mechanical engineering, you've worked at the Centre of Life, and now you've kind of set up your own business, doing the communication, presenting skills, training, coaching. Is there a challenge that maybe you've come across in business that you could share with everybody listening today?
Yeah. So the big one for me, and I'm still kind of getting to grips with it really, is it's sort of a combination of work-life balance and productivity, right? So if you are, I know you've had Tiana on before and chatted to her, and she's absolutely amazing at this stuff. But if you are spending your time productively, then it's easy to get the work-life balance. If you're not, it's harder to get the work-life balance. And what sort of balance do you want? Trying to navigate those sort of problem areas, I guess, slightly tricky things. It's a difficult one and it's ongoing. And I think most entrepreneurs would agree that it's one of the difficult things. You can either go flat out, but with the knowledge that you'll probably burn out at some point, and that's not good. Or you try and balance it, but every time you're having time off, you feel a bit guilty that you should be doing more work and should be pushing harder. But yeah.
The one thing I've mentioned it before in another podcast when someone was talking about work-life balance is you might actively go, okay, yep, I'm finishing work, shutting down the computer, not working, going to go spend time with the family. But then you realise that in your head, particularly if you've got a project coming up or something, or you've got a new exciting idea, you're still on inside your mind. And I think I mentioned that on the same podcast with my daughter once when she was quite young, turned around to me and she went, "Dad, you're here, but you're not here." That was like a nice because that was, I thought, you are right in work-life balance, but it isn't just being able to shut down the computer, it's being able to shut down the mind and separate.
Yeah, and everybody works really differently, but finding, can you shut it off like that? Can it be it's 5 o'clock, boff, I'm done? Do you have to kind of plan in almost like a wind down bit of time, a bit of space where you and whoever who's at home, partner, family, whatever, just know, okay, give him, let's give Peter an hour to let the thoughts sift out a bit. One of the things I find that I do is I'm kind of constantly compiling to-do lists in my head. So I'll wake up with a kind of...
And then you forget it all at 9 o'clock when you go on the computer.
You do, but you kind of have to get up and start doing it. So yeah, I think that's probably, it's a very generic problem, but it's one I suspect is really common to most people who are entrepreneurs, and it feeds into a bigger thought that I've been having recently about why do this? Why
put ourselves through it? Yeah.
Set up on your own, right? And everybody will have their own answer to that. For me, actually, it's about enjoying life at the minute. Some people want to work really hard and become millionaires in 5 years, and great. For me, it's about being able to enjoy the time I have now. And so if that's the kind of fundamental why, being able to go on holiday or take time off to spend time with my partner whenever she's free. She's a nurse, so she works weird shifts as well. So actually getting that productivity and that work-life balance right now is really important for the whole reason that I'm doing this.
It's very true. We've got to enjoy what we're doing. Before we get on to how you resolve that issue, obviously you've touched on to-do list. Just like to take a minute to let our community and listeners know about Entrepreneur Profs, where you can meet other entrepreneurs and learn from them, as well as find the tools we recommend. Just go to entrepreneur.profs.biz. You can also join our 3 Entrepreneur Profs Facebook group. So Duncan, you've mentioned there a little bit about, obviously you make to-do lists and then you've got to get out of bed and do them before they disappear from your mind. Is there other ways that you've maybe resolved this issue, and is there any software or tools that have helped you to do it?
Yeah, so as I know this is a kind of tech-focused podcast a little bit, so I've got 2 bits of software I want to mention. One is about the to-do lists. It's a website called plan.co. It's sort of still relatively early development, and it has a bunch of team sort of coordination tools in it as well. But I use it for to-do lists and scheduling.
Okay.
So I don't do this regularly, which is perhaps bad, but when I do it, it works really, really well. So you make a to-do list, and then it syncs up with your calendar, Google Calendar in my case, and you can just drop it in. So I have them set to be 50-minute blocks. So I write, do podcast with Peter, comes up 50-minute block, I can drop that into my day and I know that's happening, and then you can tick them off and it gives you the nice little line through, which is kind of satisfying to cross things off your to-do list. So when I'm doing
little stars as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, how much did you manage this week? And I usually put about 5 to 6 blocks in a day, depending what else. I've got other meetings and stuff scheduled in. I work around those. And when I'm doing really well, I get the week scheduled in the afternoon of the Friday before. Does that make sense? So on Friday, I'll look ahead and go.
That is some planning, though.
But what it means is that, and I really remember this really vividly, the first time I properly managed to do this, I felt like, okay, I clocked off on a Friday. It was a weekend when both me and my partner were off. And I knew what I was going to be doing next week. And I didn't have that constant monologue in my head. I stopped and I was like, it's okay. I know what I'm doing. I'll wake up Monday morning, sit down, have a look at the website, see what I'm supposed to be doing this morning. That's what I do. And it was brilliant. It meant that, that clarity, that constant that you were talking about, the kind of here but not here thing, that didn't happen. So I'm a really big fan of that. I think there are loads of different planning and productivity software out there, but plan.co is really good for me. I'm hoping that they'll bring an app out soon, so you can kind of do it from your phone as well. It's not there currently, but I found that.
But at least it syncs with your calendar, which will be in an app form.
Yeah, well, it doesn't. So the tasks in it don't then show in the calendar. So it shows stuff in the calendar, but its tasks don't cross-pollinate back across.
G Suite have a Google Calendar, but then they have Google Tasks. Does it sync with the Google Tasks?
Oh, I don't know. It might do. I haven't had to play with that.
Right.
Might give it a shot.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the second bit that you mentioned?
It's a totally different bit of software, but it popped into my head when you kind of talking about software to recommend. I do lots of video stuff. I make lots of videos. Very amateur, but I do a lot of content marketing is the main goal and strategy. I've got a new video out on LinkedIn with presentation tips every week. And I ummed and ahed about trying to find software to do it. And I've settled on a thing called Filmora Go, which is Wondershare Filmora Go, and it's fantastic. I think I got it they had a discount offer on the price, but it's really good. So if I advise, if you are messing around with video at all, and I'm a Windows user, so I don't have access to iMovie and that sort of stuff. But if you're struggling with Windows inbuilt movie makers and free things that have watermarks and all that kind of stuff, spend a little bit of money, and it's brilliant. It lets me produce stuff really well. So. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. That's good. Yeah, I've ended up switching from Windows. I'm afraid. Everything's now Google, so they're now tracking everything I do. So.
Yeah, fair. I mean, once they track it anyway, so once you accept that it's fine, might as well make use of all the tools.
I like how you were touching on that, how really planning helps you to kind of clear your mind, because once you know, it then takes off some of that burden on your shoulders. Can get, oh, I've got to do this, or oh no, I forgot to do that, and I need to do this, and it just frees up your mind to actually be in the room, I suppose. So
Yeah, absolutely.
if your partner is a nurse, it's going to be quite rare that you do get that time together where
she does
a little bit refreshed. So
3 12-hour shifts a week, and then for whichever one is the next day, she's just knackered. So it's trying to make the most of that time. And if I had a 9 to 5, I'd never see her. So it's, why am I doing this? I'm doing this to be able to spend that time and do things well. And being productive. I'm not great at doing it all the time, but when I do it. So this morning, actually, I've sat down and planned this whole week, and suddenly, that feeling of, I've got so much to do. Okay, it's a bit more sorted now. And
helps with the sanity,
yeah,
the mental health.
Absolutely. And a lot of that actually came off the back of a chat I had with Tiana. So
she is fantastic. If you haven't listened to that podcast, I think it's episode 3. Go back and listen to Tiana, because her content as well is so good. Like, she's on the ball with it. And I wish I had a brain like Tiana's where I could just live my life like that.
So just do it sometimes, I think is my thing. I'm not beating myself up about not doing it all the time, but when you feel you need to, and you feel everything's getting a bit too much, sit down and do it.
What would be your top tip for entrepreneurs who want to improve their presentation and communication skills?
Cool. I would say, first up, well done. Attitude is one of the biggies. You can't train people who don't want to get better. But if you are good, you will stand out from the rest in a really long way. But in terms of a big tip, the biggest thing that I think gets forgotten is that it's not about you. People think because they're standing up at the front of the room, this is the Duncan show or the Peter show. It's all about you and your ideas and the stuff you want to say, and isn't this great? And don't you think it's exciting? And it's not at all, because if you weren't there, the audience would have a lovely time. They'd chat, they'd send some emails, they'd do some networking. It'd be great. Right?
Yes.
If they're not there, you're just a lonely person standing talking to a room, empty room, right? So it's not really about you, and you take that thought further. You go, when you're writing a talk, who's the audience? Who's going to be in that room? And how do I engage them? And often that comes down to, what do they care about? How do I connect my thing, the thing I want to talk about? So in my case, presentation skills. How do I connect presentation skills to what they care about? So if it's a room full of PhD students, they care about going out and going to conferences and not looking like idiots. So I connect it to this idea of being able to stand up on a stage and kind of hold your own. If it's people doing pitching and sales, it's about separating yourself out from the 10 other pitches that the people across the table have seen that day. How do you stand out? How do you be remembered? So if you're first, they remember you at the end of the day and they go, we'll pick that person. That's kind of what they care about. If it's to just business owners in general who, promoting your business and marketing is a big, I really encourage people to use speaking as part of a marketing plan almost. So it's about that. It's about finding, what do they care about? What are they interested in? And connecting your thing to that, rather than just speaking about what you care about and what you're interested in, because they might not care about that.
I like what you said there, because we've both been to events or seen speakers, and you can always tell which one's the ego trip, and then which one is actual focused on the audience. Actually, I want to give true value here. And I've seen it before, where you attend something that you think is going to be a talk, and it ends up just being a sales pitch or all about those. And I hate that when it's a paid talk, when you pay to go.
Yeah.
And all they're doing is saying, buy my services, or this is me, this is all. And you're just like, that's not the reason.
No, it's
to come,
It's like social media, if you try and sell directly to people in social media, it doesn't work. If you put out good content that people value and you build an audience and people go away going, oh, Peter's great, I really liked his talk, that was really helpful, seems like he knows what he's talking about, that then connects to sales later on. It's a slower process.
It's all about the content.
It's all about the content.
You're my good content. No, I like that. Yeah. So the top tip, focus on the audience. The
Focus on
other thing as well you see is, you have things you find funny, but
Yes.
and we've all seen the jokes flop where we face palm like, oh no, did
Oh, you always check jokes through somebody else before you go up on stage. And yeah, it's stuff you think is funny sometimes isn't. If there is any doubt, don't
say it.
Just don't do it. Because a joke that goes well is great, but there is nothing worse than a joke that ends badly, particularly if you don't then have the skills and the confidence to kind of recover and
recover from that. Yeah. What I learned from teaching as well is you might be having a joke with one person, but then someone else in the classroom would be fuming and taking offence, even though it's nothing to do with them. You just never know who's. You've
got to be careful. You've got to be careful about alienating people. And there's some speakers have a technique, and it is a technique where you kind of pick a forward person. You pick somebody to pick on in the audience a little bit, and you have a little bit of joke with them, a little bit of mocking with them, and the theory is that the audience kind of bands together in laughing and joking about this one person. But if they don't, if they react badly to you picking on someone, you lose a lot of I don't like it as a technique. I think it's lazy, it's a bit aggressive, but some people use it. And that's the thing, you just got to be careful. Audiences are all different. You've got to always be reading them and kind of switched on to what's happening and what's going on there.
Absolutely. And you've mentioned a couple of pieces of software and tools that you like. Is there any that is your favourite and why? Maybe something to help with presentation and communication? I don't.
So I'm a big fan of PowerPoint, actually.
Okay.
Lots of people say PowerPoint's awful and Death by PowerPoint is like, no. It's just a tool. Bad PowerPoint is people being lazy and not understanding how to use the tool well. One of the reasons I like it is it's kind of ubiquitous. Everybody is vaguely familiar with it. You can get something together. You can put some words and some pictures in very easily, and that's kind of all you need, really, particularly for good, clean presentations. In terms of speaking and presentations and what I do, that's about the only software I really use. I do Zoom and Skype and that sort of stuff for distance coaching, but I like it. I'm a fan. It's the simple stuff is very easy to work out, and you don't need any of the complicated stuff.
It's good when people use it as an aid, and it really, empowers the talk a little bit more and adds to the talk. It's bad, as you say, when people are lazy, and I've seen it before where people are delivering training in America and all they're doing is reading a PowerPoint, and you're like, tell you what, mate, do you want to sit down? I'll read it myself.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing, it's used badly, probably like 90% of the time. Even people thinking of it as a reminder, like each slide reminds you what you're supposed to say next. No, just learn it. Like, you should know what you want to say and where you want to go. So yeah, it's about using it as a backup for the points you're trying to make, and a signpost. So that my slides are very minimum. I will have one word or one image, maybe a couple of words, but not sentences, not really bullet points very often. And part of the reason I use them is to show people how minimal you can go and it still be effective. I have the biggest failing with PowerPoint is what I call TMS, which is the only acronym I use. Too much stuff. Just too much stuff. Don't put too much stuff. So it's one kind of thing at a time, and one image or one idea at a time is really important as well. So you have it as a support. So if you wanted to communicate how wonderful dogs are, you put up a picture of a cute puppy and everybody's thinking, oh my God, dogs are wonderful, right? But you also use it as a signpost. So people zone in and out of talks all the time. You can't really control that. They might suddenly remember that they left the cooker on, or trying to work out what they want for dinner or whatever. If I'm doing a 5-minute little bit of talking about X, about body language, say, and you zone out, and when you zone back in again, I've moved on. It can be really confusing to pick up where I am. But if there's a big sign that says body language up behind me, you go, all right, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Okay. So that kind of, signposting for people to stay on track with what you're talking about. It's not about providing detail. It shouldn't be about giving lots of information out, because that's not what it's good for.
I think the tech companies are quite good at this. So when you look at the Google and the Apple keynotes, they're literally just a coloured background with maybe one word, and then obviously they're quite strong on the imagery that they use in the videos, but they're really minimalistic at all. I think Apple and Google are both, they've probably got that bit nailed really when it comes to
it's so there's a lot of the big companies in Silicon Valley work with a company called the Duarte company, who are, last time I checked, the 6th biggest company in Silicon Valley, and they are solely presentation and communications.
Right. Okay.
Nancy Duarte runs it, and she's fantastic. But yeah, so they spend a lot of time thinking about this, and as you say, in the tech sector, often this sort of stuff is forgotten about, and certainly stereotypically, the computer scientists and the geeks are the ones who can't communicate and can't talk. But the big companies recognize the value of it and really put effort into making sure that it goes well for them. And yeah, TMS, just keep it simple. Don't put too much stuff. Don't put too much stuff up. And how you work out if it's too much stuff, you put a slide up and you look at it and you go, is that too much stuff? Yeah, okay, get rid of it.
If it looks busy, narrow it down. Yeah.
Yeah, or split it into different slides. The number of, there's all these sort of weird rules about PowerPoint, which I think is complete nonsense. But there's, if you want to make 5 points, have 5 slides. You don't have to put them all on one slide. If you want to do 5 points, 1 point at a time, you don't have to put them all on one slide, particularly if that's going to make the slide look busy. Have 5 slides with 1 point at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an extra click of the button. It doesn't impact you at all, really.
There's not a charge per slide, is there?
No, exactly. I go to talks with 100, 150, 200 slides. There's basically nothing on each one.
That's it. Well, that's all they do, is just one word. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on and giving all your value there, all your tips and tricks. Before you go, is there a way that people can connect with you, and is there also somebody that you would recommend to come on the podcast?
Yes, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Duncan Yellowless on LinkedIn. I spend lots of time there. I'm also on Twitter, D_Yellowless, and you can find my email. That's the word I'm looking for. Find my email and stuff through my website, which is duncanyellowless.com. But do get in touch. I'm really happy to chat. As I say, I put stuff out on LinkedIn and Twitter all the time. I put a new video out, a tip video out every week, and other bits and pieces. So yeah, come and chat. That would be great. Somebody I'd like to recommend, Michelle Minikin, who is a chartered business psychologist working up here in the Northeast. She's really good fun. We get together and eat cake every now and then. And yeah, she's got some really interesting insights on how to do business and a sort of slightly different side of things, as well as running her own podcast and various other bits and pieces. So I think she'd be a great guest.
Sounds fun. We'll definitely contact her. So thank you so much for coming on today. It's been great having you.
No worries, Peter. Thank you very much.
Remember, listeners, to go and A-start your business.